Welcome to Creating from the Heart. I'm Susie Vance, and I'm here with Matthew Carroll.
Hello.
Well, Matthew,
Hi.
how are you today?
Good, Susie. How are you?
I'm good.
A little rainy today.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I could use a nap, I think.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, it's nice though. Thanks for having me.
I'm more than welcome. And I understand you're a mediator.
I am. Yeah. Back in 2019, I started my own business with a business partner of mine. And we started Keystone Mediation, and we help mediate a whole different litany of cases. We do mostly divorces in Indiana and domestic and also post-decree work. And in Illinois, we do a lot of civil mediations.
Interesting.
So we do a lot of landlord-tenant cases. We do stalking, no contact, neighbor disputes, homeowners association disputes. I mean, you name it. We do a little bit, a little bit of everything.
All of the human relationships.
A lot of human relationships. And that's really what it's about, is the relationship.
How'd you get into this?
Well, I used to be an opera singer. I had a 19-year career as a professional opera singer. And I started full-time at the Lyric Opera of Chicago in 2004.
Okay.
And shortly after that, I was asked to serve on the negotiation committee to negotiate a new contract. So I quickly got my feet wet to the world of positional bargaining, where it's your traditional bargaining that everybody's familiar with, where somebody says, well, we want a raise, and somebody says, well, we want you to take a pay cut. And then you ask for things and everybody just sits there like this and just says no.
Right.
And that's how it works. And then eventually, once you reach impasse, then a federal mediator comes in.
Right.
An FMCS, which stands for the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services. And when the federal mediator comes in, that's when stuff starts to get accomplished. And you're like, well, why couldn't this have happened sooner? Like, these are just conversations, you know? And I was just so enthralled by the process. So the second round of negotiations, fast forward 3 to 4 years later, it was the same mediator who is now the head of the FMCS in Washington, D.C. And his name was Javier. And I said, can I take you out to coffee? But I promised not to talk about these negotiations. Right. I want to pick your brain about what you do. I love
about
this.
The process.
About the process. Fell in love with the process. It just made sense. You know, like, let's get away from those positions and let's get more into the needs and the interests. You know, why do you want that raise? Why do you want the pay cut? What does the pay cut represent? What does the raise represent? And then you start realizing, well, the parking garages are more expensive and groceries are more expensive. And that's why we need the raise. And then you start breaking it down to those individual issues. Let's just talk about parking. Let's just talk about food. And before you know it, you come to an agreement, because we're getting away from the bigger picture and getting into the weeds and finding out what the true nature what's driving it. Exactly. So I asked Javier, like, if I were to get into this,
how do I do that?
How do I do this? So he pointed me in the direction of multiple programs, multiple schools that I could start getting schooling. And it's tough when you're in the performing arts, because when you're in shows, on average, I think I did about 110 performances a year. And we work 7 days a week sometimes, and most of the shows are until midnight. So it's tough to find those windows to take classes.
Right.
So I eventually was able to start taking classes during the summer at Northwestern University. I ended up getting certified in multiple sides of the ADR community, which stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution. And then I started networking with people here in Indiana. I started sending old-fashioned snail mail letters saying, I just got my certification and I'm interested in doing this, and can I shadow you? And, you know, nobody wrote back. one person eventually wrote back, and that is now
Did you
ultimately.
have Illinois in your letterhead?
No, I didn't. But I did also reach out to people in Illinois because I got lucky. I got accepted into a very prestigious mentorship program through a community organization called the Center for Conflict Resolution,
Yes.
CCR, and they are in the loop. And I did their mentorship program, which is highly intensive, 6-month program. I was given a mentor who was kind of my guide, and I was so lucky because I got the absolutely fantastic mentor. And then I was also exposed to coaches that have been mediating for 30, 40 years.
Right.
And I'm the type of person that's always learning. I'm always
You're a
challenging.
sponge.
I am a sponge. And then I'm the person that has those useless facts stuck in my brain. If I went on Jeopardy and I was forced to answer it, I probably wouldn't know it. But when I'm in the shower, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it was. It's like it's in there somewhere. So I was able to pick the brains of some of these really fantastic masters at their craft. And I'm so fortunate for that education. And I still volunteer there today, actually, 4 years later. I still volunteer 2 to 3 times in court. I do some of their long model cases as well. And then during the pandemic, I got involved down in Bloomington, Indiana, with a lot of their evictions. A lot of people were really struggling during the pandemic, and it was sad. Poor people really were hurt the most. And it was just amazing to see just how that process worked. And so my job as the mediator is to try to help build a little bit of empathy. How has the pandemic affected you? It's easy to vilify a landlord thinking, well, they're rich and they have all these buildings, but some landlords, they only rent out one unit. And when they don't collect rent, they're unable to pay their own mortgage.
Right.
And so it was nice to have those conversations because we were building a bridge.
Right.
And that's what it is. It's about connecting, right? It's easy to get into conflict and just start filing lawsuits. But when you get people to sit down
And be personal.
right,
Right.
now all of a sudden that's a different story.
Yeah.
And in today's day and age, we're getting away from communication in a personal way and more towards an online method of communication through text messages and social media.
Which is a problem. Can be.
It can be a problem, right? Because it's hard to know what the meaning is behind certain words when you're not in person.
Right.
So a lot of times it's about miscommunication. A lot of time it's
Right.
not having enough facts and enough information on the table. And that's what I tell my clients as a mediator. It's my job to make sure you're making informed decisions.
Right.
We can't play cards without a full deck. So it's my job to make sure the full deck is on the table before those decisions start happening. So I fell in love with it. I mean, I got into the performing arts because it was easy to me. I was gifted with talent. And also I grew up in a very strict household growing up. There was no crying. Crying was weakness.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was tough. My dad was military. And so it was a tough household to grow up in. And so I found the performing arts to be a vehicle for me to be myself,
Right.
to express myself, and to be in a community that was welcoming.
Yeah, I thought that was okay.
It was okay, yeah. And so that was the first half of my career. And then the second half of my career is now this mediation career, which I am just infatuated with. I love it. I find people so interesting.
Oh, yes.
So interesting. And I've always been a curious person. I'm always asking a lot of questions. And so this fits really well.
Right.
So then fast forward, I took my education at Northwestern in 2018 and 2019. And then in 2021, the dean reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in teaching the class. So 2 years after taking it, I am now adjunct professor at Northwestern University teaching the divorce mediation class. And I do that 3 to 4 times a year with another colleague of mine, Sandra Crawford, who is a very famous mediator in Illinois. She's also an attorney, and she's been doing it for about 30 years. And she was my instructor. And so I love it. I just love it. Being able to give back and taking the knowledge that's stuck somewhere in this gray matter and being able to share it back.
Right, and being able to make sure there are lots of people out there that aren't coming from a harsh, hard point.
That's right.
It's like the person I was talking to you about before, who turned the debt collection business into how can I help
How can
you?
I help? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Walk me through this process.
Yeah.
That's different than when are you going to pay?
Yes.
Right. and lead with compassion. That's kind of my be curious and lead with compassion.
And be open to understanding what it is that's driving it that you can't see.
That's right.
Right.
And mediation is a future focus process. So like, especially in divorce, you have a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And I will say to clients that if you want me to fix things that happened in the past, that's going to be more of a role of a therapist, and I have the wrong diploma on my wall. I don't think you're going to want my help with that, but I am here to help pave that road forward. And let's do this in a peaceful way, but also your way. You're the parents of these children. You know how hard you worked for your house and your stuff, and you're the experts of your lives. So why do you want to put this in the hand of a judge to make these decisions for your family? Like, to me, the system doesn't make sense. The system needs, in my opinion, and the legal profession in general, has not changed since the writing of the Declaration of Independence. If you go into a courtroom today, it doesn't look much different than it did 50 years ago and 100 years ago, and a lot of those laws are still on the books. If you go to an emergency room, if you were there 50 years ago versus today, it's completely different. We didn't even have HMOs 50 years ago, and now we have insurance, and there's all these triage units and new technology. And so the system, and especially with divorce, which I think sets up for failure right off the bat, the minute the divorce gets filed, the system is pinning mom versus dad.
Yeah.
So we need to fight. And that doesn't make sense. That doesn't help children. That doesn't help families. And that doesn't promote good co-parenting moving forward. I have found this, and a lot of my clients have found this to be so different. Like, they are surprised how easy it is.
Yes.
At the end of the process, they're like, we're done? That was easier than we thought.
Right.
Indiana is one of 3 states that allow non-attorneys to draft certain legal documents.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting. And it empowers the people to be able to do this on their own with a little bit of help.
Right.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to have emotions. This is an emotional process. With a lot of my training, we do a lot of psychological training. We do a lot of legal training because it's not the practice of law.
No.
The American Bar Association and the state of Indiana determined a long time ago that mediation is not the practice of law, but it's also not therapy.
Right.
So it's its own art form. And it goes back to my musical upbringing, is that I tell people harmony, right. But also like creativity, right? Like, you go through the court system and lawyers, and they use things called guidelines and statutes, and it's more of a paint by number. It has to fit inside a certain box. But I tell my clients, this is a blank canvas. You get to paint this painting. This is your painting to paint. Now, it still has to pass muster with the judge, but you can try anything you want. And if the judge says no, then we come back and we talk about it and we adjust to that, and this gives them control of their future. And that is a lovely, beautiful thing. It's huge. It's huge because I like to use a lot of visuals. And I think the visual that I envision is like standing at the end of a diving board at the pool. And you're launching yourself forward. You're propelling yourself forward for the next phase of your life. And you're doing this in a way that promotes healthy communication, healthy co-parenting. We don't have to fight. We just have to have some hard conversations.
Right.
And that's really what it boils down to.
And learning how to do that's a good thing.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad. Because things change as you get older. The kids get older. Your finances change, people lose jobs. And so it may mean we have to come back and have a conversation 3 years from now when those changes occur. But again, They're doing it in the comfort and the privacy. It's a confidential process, so they're doing it in the privacy of an office instead of a courtroom setting where it's public and it's on record, and you're just sitting there and talking.
And all of this happened because you were working in opera and you were curious.
I was curious. Yeah. And people think, well, how do you deal with people fighting all the time? I'm like, well, I came from opera. There's a lot of drama in the theater too, so this is nothing new to me. And I grew up in a home that had a lot of chaos and had a lot of conflict. So I'm comfortable in chaos. When I'm training my students,
That's really good.
That's what I tell my students. If you're not comfortable with conflict, then maybe conflict resolution isn't the best profession for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So where can somebody find you if they would like to?
Well, my office is located in Dyer, Indiana. They can go to keystonemediation.com.
Do you ever do anything on Zoom or at long distance?
We do, yes. So we offer online mediation. We do a lot of long distance. That's not uncommon in today's day and age. I've partnered up with a company out of California called Hello Divorce, and they do mostly online divorces. And so when someone in Indiana needs mediation services through Hello Divorce, I do the mediation for them. Yeah. So we do a lot of online, a lot of hybrid. I would say I'm noticing a generational gap. 40 and older still want to do it in person. I think they feel this is a personal experience. And 40 and younger, I'm seeing that people
taking care of business.
They're taking care of business, and doing it online and doing it over Zoom is completely okay. And you have to go where what the client's needs are, right?
Right.
So, I love it. I just love it, Susie.
I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, helping people is it's nice to see people, you go to court and you see the despair and the sadness and the anger. And I just had clients finalize their divorce last week, and I told them I was honored to be part of this, but I watched them talk fondly to one another. After they signed everything, they sat there for 45 minutes and they just talked about all the joy that they found in their marriage. And I'm like, thank you for letting me be a part of such an intimate conversation. And that's beautiful. And if you're going to end it your way, end it peacefully. Like, you don't get that in court. You don't get that peaceful resolution.
Right.
I had another couple say, is there a nice restaurant close by that we can go celebrate our 35 years of being married together? And I said, yeah, there's a great one right across the street. and they sent me an email a few days later and said, you were not lying. The food was fantastic. We had a great bottle of wine. And thank you for all your help. And
that's really great.
It really is. I mean, it's just our biggest struggle, I would say, is that people just don't know what mediation is. And they think that mediators may not know the law. We have to know the law. Right. We can't give legal advice, even if you're an attorney.
But that's the framework.
Right? And I can say, this is what the state requires, right? I can't interpret the law. I can't interpret the statute, but I can just give them that information and then let them make their own decisions based on that information. Right. So, it is interesting. I think the biggest challenge for us is that people, when they get divorced, feel like you have to get an attorney, and you don't.
No.
You don't need representation if you choose not to. I don't think it's a bad idea to have it, especially if you want to. I look at it as like an insurance policy. If you want somebody to review your legal paperwork, or if you have a legal question while you're in the mediation process, it's good to have somebody in place, if not in play. So I don't think it's a bad thing. And lawyers, by all means, we're never going to not need lawyers. But if we can help people and families not destroy their finances, not destroy their family's still going to be a family. Dad will always be dad. Right. Mom will always be mom. It's just going to look a little different. And we just have to navigate those differences.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Susie. And thanks for helping me get the message out. I appreciate that.
This is good.
Yeah. It's a really fun way to go from one creative field to another creative field.
Using the skills you learned in the first.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you very much. Creating from the heart, the artistry of living. We'll see you next time.